Hi everyone, Emily here from Emily Reads, and today I have for you just an announcement of something new that I'm going to start with my channel. So I actually first heard about this challenge on Emmy's channel, and Emmy, if you are not aware of her, she is a booktuber who is studying English literature at university, and she focuses a lot of her reading and her discussions on classics. Um, and it's amazing to me, someone who is young and who also loves classics. Like, I was an English education major, that's my bachelor's degree, and I went into English education because I love to read and I like to work with people, not necessarily that I like to read classics. So it always impresses me when someone young loves classics, because that was not me. And she and other people have been doing this challenge where they read around the world. So the challenge is to read a book for each country in the 195 countries in the United Nations. So the book has to be written by an author from that country and like kind of represents that country. So I thought I would start that challenge in 2023. Now, there are some who have done that challenge on the internet and doing some research that they read like a book a week. I am not going to do that. So I might never finish this challenge, and that's okay. But I just want it in my mind and to start looking for books that represent each of those countries to diversify my reading a little bit more. I tend to stick to fantasy, some historical fiction, and romance. And while I think I do an okay job reading reading from people of color. Like, I know I could do better in that area. I for sure do a pretty decent job reading women's authors. In fact, there was a stretch of time where I was like, I haven't read too many male authors. So that being said, I have about 12 or 13 books here that I've already acquired in just various book hauls that will fit my reading around the world challenge. I'm also trying to find a way to fit them into my just other reading challenges that I'm already knowing that I want to do in 2023. So I'm going to just kind of show you what I have planned. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 13 books. One book I honestly don't know if I'll get to next year. You'll see, it's a beast of a book. But let's get started. So the first book actually is a book that represents a country that is not part of the United Nations. But I feel like, given the influence that it has in the world, the population of that country, it should be represented. And that is The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu and translated by Ken Liu. And this is a science fiction book. It has been recently translated. It's won the Hugo Award, and it's set against a backdrop of China's Cultural Revolution, and it's about a secret military project which sends signals into space to establish contact with aliens. And then this civilization that's about to be destroyed, like, gets a hold of the signal and then tries to invade Earth. It sounds intriguing. I've heard good things on BookTube. Then I've got 2 books that will represent America. And I purposely chose 2 books because I wanted one was a classic that I have never read, should have read in high school probably, or college. It didn't happen because it was never assigned to me. And another book I've heard wonderful things about. Again, it's another book that I probably should have read but was never assigned to me, so I just have never read it. So first, for the United States, is Zora Neale Hurston, Their Eyes Were Watching God. And I've just heard that this is a very beautifully written book, so I'm looking forward to reading this. And then I also want to read East of Eden by John Steinbeck. Fingers crossed that I like this. I've heard really good things about this. I want to like it. I've read Of Mice and Men and I loved it, but my first experience with John Steinbeck was The Pearl, and I read that in middle school. It was assigned to me. I absolutely hated it and was like, nope, I don't ever want to read anything by John Steinbeck again. And I also remember this movie with Jane Seymour was on like all the time growing up on WGN, and I would watch bits and pieces of it, and I was like, what is that? This is just awful. But I think I was too young to understand it and appreciate it. So I'm hoping that as an adult, I'll enjoy this book. Then for Algeria, I plan on reading The Stranger by Albert Camus. Yes, I know this is not written. So I've heard some things about this book. I took French in high school, and so, we've learned about Albert Camus, but I've never read The Stranger. For Sweden, I plan on reading Beartown by Fredrik Backman. I've only read, or I should say I have DNF'd Anxious People by him, and I DNF'd Anxious People after about 30 pages. So I'm really hoping that Beartown will be a different experience for me. I will never pick up Anxious People again. I just found the tone to be very condescending, and I hated that. So, but I've heard from other people I should give Beartown a shot. So then for Australia, I hope to read 9 Perfect Strangers by Liane Moriarty. And this is about like people traveling to a health resort, I think. So I don't know too much about this book. For Spain, I hope to read The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry if I mispronounced it. But this kind of intrigues me that it deals with books, and a book that, like every copy of every book that an author has written, someone is trying to destroy that book. So I've heard really mixed things about The Shadow of the Wind. I've heard that it's kind of like you either love this book or you hate it. Hopefully I love it. Then I was planning on reading this in October, and it didn't happen, but that would be The Hangman's Daughter by Oliver Potch. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm sorry. And this would be for Germany. And again, this is set in 1659, and it's like a boy is pulled from a river, and he's got a tattoo on his shoulder. And then there's things that it kind of brings back witchcraft trials that happened previous, like 75 years ago. So I'm intrigued about that. Then for Cabo Verde I'm going to try to figure out what this, it's The Last Will and Testament of Senhor da Silva Araujo. And basically it's about someone who was born an orphan, and he rose up to become an entrepreneur and a self-made businessman, and then his like last will and testament is read out loud, and there's just some shocking news about this man. So I don't know if I'll like it, but it was free at my library's used book sale. So when I saw that it was for Cape Verde, I just had to snatch that. For Nigeria, I'm going to read Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I sadly don't know much about this book. This is terrible. Like, I was an English major, and I don't know much about this work. So I don't immediately have plans to read it next year, based on so far what I've filled out for one of my reading challenges. But I know that eventually I will get to that book. I also hope to read The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie, and this is for India. So Salman Rushdie was born in India, and this is I had plans to read this years ago, like over a decade or so ago, and it just never happened. And the reason why I am intrigued by this book is after he wrote this book, there was actually a fatwa put on his head from the lead Ayatollah, because I guess there's some harsh criticisms on Islam in here. And so because of that, he lived for some years in hiding. Yeah. And then for France, I hope to read A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabois, or Christelle Dabois. I totally am butchering their last names. I'm so sorry. And this is a young adult fantasy, and I've heard really good things about the first book and how wonderful the first book is. And unfortunately, from what I understand, that they kind of go downhill after that. But hopefully I don't find that to be the case. And lastly, I have a book for Russia. Now, I'm hoping someday I'm going to read this book. Now Emmy, and she's got a friend, and I cannot remember her friend's name. They have read this together, and there are other people on YouTube that, like I've actually searched like how to annotate this book and like what are some people's ideas, and some people just absolutely rave about how wonderful this book is. And these are like young people in their 20s raving about this book, so which is super impressive. And they're reading the unabridged version, which is super impressive. So I did some research, and it's like if you read about like 10 pages a day, you can finish it in a year. I don't know if that's going to actually happen, but for Russia, we have War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. And this is obviously a beast of a book, but I'm like, you know what? I read massive fantasy books. Why can't I read this? But this follows, and it's an epic story of the Napoleonic Wars. So that right there is my start for reading around the world. If you have any suggestions for any countries that I have not mentioned in this this video, please let me know in the comments down below, because I need all of these suggestions that I can get. So thank you so much for liking. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And I will, of course, throughout the year, I will do like a check-in on how I'm doing on this challenge. Enjoy the rest of your day.